We wanted to talk with you about the outlook of America and why more Americans are looking to leave America after Trump's victory. I'm here with Enzo Melgarejo, and we're going to be discussing some political news with you inside this video. So first of all, talk to us about the change you're seeing in search queries or just interest coming from Americans looking to leave America right after Trump got elected now, which is kind of unexpected because you would think that more people are looking to stay. But the problem is that American politics is very polarized, and people always have reasons to leave. Some people would leave because they don't like Trump being in charge. And let's say Harris would have won. A lot of people would leave because they didn't like her, right? So it goes both ways. Please talk to us about what you're seeing.
Well, to start off, since the ending of the election, Americans have searched 1,500% more about migration to European countries, to South American countries, to Southeast Asian countries than before. So yeah, I think, so answering your question, I think it has to do a little bit with the, this political disillusionment, probably some disillusioned Democrats who wanted Kamala to win and now Trump wins, and they think it's the end of the world and they want to migrate. I would say not all of them will probably move, but still a big percentage will want to escape. Yeah, and since Trump's presidency, it's also affecting other parts of the world, for example, Europe and Germany. I don't know if you've seen this, but Germany's chancellor just declared that in January they will be asking for an election because the other side of his coalition government gave him a vote of no confidence after he fired the finance minister. I think this just goes to show the failures of left-leaning governments in Europe and across the whole world. I don't know what you think about it.
Yeah, I was just looking. Actually, not just looking, I was observing the election in Austria and how President von der Bellen of Austria did not even want to have a meeting with the party's leader. And the conservative, they consider them far-right party, won in Austria too. The president of Austria did not want to build any kind of relationship with the leader of the government, Herbert Kickl, because he is against the party's values. However, the Austrian government also was in favor of a mandate during the past crisis, which was totally unconstitutional, anti-democracy, and they wanted to push through with it just to create enough fear in the minds of people so that they would take the bioweapon. Now, it did not come, but just the fact that they put so much pressure on the population really showed to me that some people are willing to do whatever it takes to get to the promised land. And what we're seeing now, what you were referring to in terms of an increase in search queries focused on Americans looking to leave America, and this is right after the Trump election win. It's kind of weird because you would think that few Americans are looking to leave now than before the election. However, as you have pointed out, that is not the case. It's actually the polar opposite. And people are leaving for all kinds of reasons. Like the conservative Californians, they left to Nevada, Texas, and Florida. And I think that's why it's easier now for Nevada to win, than it was maybe 10 years ago, because a lot of the conservatives that used to live in California left to more conservative states or swing states. Now that's very interesting, and we're actually seeing another picture like this, what you're pointing out about the populations being unhappy with left-wing governments. They've been in place for decades in Europe. We saw another extreme example of this when the Dutch election happened, and it took Geert Wilders, I think about 6 months to form a coalition with the other party because nobody wanted to work with him because his ideas were just too far right. So nobody wanted to work with him. So it took him about 6 months. And we'll see what the picture will ultimately pan out to be in Austria and other countries. And you've now pointed out about Germany being in a similar situation where the general population is totally unsatisfied with the results the government has generated over the past years and decades. The migration crisis of Germany, which started in 2015, because back then, Chancellor Angela Merkel saw a window she could open up because there was war in the Middle East, and there's still war today. There's been a war in the Middle East for a very long time. And they saw a window where they could open up the gates to import reasonably priced labor, to fill labor shortages in Germany. And they accomplished that. That's great. But they didn't put a cap on it. And they didn't think, what are we going to do next? It kind of made sense in a lot of ways, because if you have labor shortages, you have a big problem. Services become more expensive as a result of labor shortages. That's one aspect. Or you're not even going to be able to get the service, which is also not good. So the decision Angela Merkel made back then was a life-changing decision for the whole trajectory of Europe, not just Germany, because the EU has open borders. There are no border checks between Germany and France, Germany and Holland, Germany and Switzerland, Germany and Austria. There are no border checks, right? Schengen, yes. Yeah. However, during the past crisis, border checks were enforced in certain Western European countries where you could not easily get in and out unless you had some kind of proof. So I don't want to articulate too much about the past crisis, but technically and still presently, Europe has open borders, right? The European Union has open borders. Now, what we're seeing, just our company, what we're seeing is just increased demand from people looking to leave Western countries for all the different reasons you can imagine, including a dissatisfaction surrounding immigration, increasing taxes. We're seeing a lot of things that, you didn't even think would actually happen like 20 years ago. Like Europe didn't have these migration issues that Europe has now, right? And this trend seems to be irreversible for a number of reasons. Because the EU is a democratic union, it's impossible to revert all of this. You can't revert it. The only way that you could revert it is through dictatorship. And what are the chances of that happening? Not very high. What I can see coming, and I have no proof that this will happen, but what I see, and this is just based on trends, is that the conservative Europeans will depart for places in Eastern Europe. Why? Because of proximity. Those are the first places they will go to. Others who have the financial resources, the net worth, the connections, language abilities, they move outside the geographic location into places where we, for instance, operate: Paraguay, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, maybe Mexico, Southeast Asia, parts of Africa. They move into geographic locations where they are far away from the modern day's challenges. So what I see becoming a possibility, and there's no guarantee that this will ever happen. It may happen, it may not happen, but the European Union, or I would just say the entire continent of Europe, splitting into two populations: the conservative population and the democratic population. You can call it woke population, yeah. And this is kind of happening in the US too. And maybe this is also happening. It would be very interesting to see this trend in Latin America, because the conservative people, they're moving to Paraguay. Yeah. And you would think it would make sense that the Democrats of Paraguay would move into other places. Not all of them, of course, but some of them. Yeah. So what do you predict for South America? What kind of future do you see in this continent?
Well, I've always think about this question a lot. To be honest, I see a little bit of what you said, like European migration coming in waves here. I think that will happen now and in 10 years and in 20 years until Europeans are tired of coming. I think that will keep going on. I think a lot of Asians will come here as well, mainly from Taiwan in the future. And regarding the polarization of Paraguay, I don't think that will happen. As I said, the Paraguayans are really difficult people to tame, especially when the government is trying to tame them. They are inherently distrustful of government, of whatever government touches. They automatically disregard as bad if government is involved. So I don't think that will happen in the near future. Regarding Europe, will it keep polarizing? Will the European Union survive? I think it depends. Today it's clearly going right. The political spectrum in the whole of Europe, actually, it's going right. Will they have enough force to revert some of these dumb decisions they made? Let's see. I saw Macron is trying to make a European military force to make secure borders, but I don't see he has the strength in him, to be honest. not even the leadership. Holland is right now, but it's not. It doesn't have the sufficient strength. Germany might turn right. I think that would be a pretty important election for Europe, pretty defining election for the rest of this decade, at least at the bare minimum. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
I definitely see a split in Europe. And not a split in like countries or so, I mean maybe, but I just see more people with conservative values moving to Eastern European countries, and the people in Eastern Europe, they're very conservative. Yeah. They're very conservative. Now for them, because people from Western Europe, a lot of them leave because they don't like what their country stands for today. That's why they don't want to stay there. In Eastern Europe, people don't have that problem. So they don't want to relocate, because when you relocate, you have to give up a lot of what you represent, like your language, your culture, everything, your cultural heritage. I'm willing to give it up. I'm here in Paraguay, right? But I'm from Western Europe, right? But I know a lot of people from Eastern Europe, they're like, you can leave. I don't feel the need to leave yet. And Eastern Europe, because of its political history, especially the times of the Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union, people were very skeptical of their governments because a lot of things happened they didn't agree with, right? And the good thing about Eastern Europe is that their history is not too far in the past. For Western Europe, it is much further in the past. You know, like for instance, France, they didn't do good during the Roman Empire days. They didn't do good during World War II. The Germans they underwent a lot of wars in the past, you know. But I think the peak of European civilization was in 2019. That's my opinion. And I don't think it will ever get as good as it was. 2019, in my humble opinion, was the absolute peak of Western European civilization. I don't think it's ever going to reach that point again in our lifetime. In our lifetime, I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, exactly. Because once you reach such a high standard, you have to think about the values you develop and the mindset you develop. You develop mindsets of entitlement. You develop a certain sentiment that is not conducive to hard work. And the only reason why Europe achieved that, to be fair, is because manufacturing was outsourced to the East. And now the Eastern countries are becoming richer and richer and richer. And the countries that have the manufacturing, they have all the wealth, if you really think about it. The only thing that's still in place that is really worthy is that the companies are still based in the West, and that we still heavily rely on our currencies as leverage. Yeah. But it's kind of like a scale. It's already shifting, you know. It's not what it was like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So unless the mindset changes, and I don't see much hope there, there's a quote which is very applicable in this case. Good times make weak people, and bad times make strong people. Yeah. Isn't that very applicable to almost every time in history where you could say, what were people like during that time? And then you looked at their results and you could immediately tell, hey, people were not very strong, or people were actually extremely strong, hardworking and all of that. And now I think we're in a society with weak people, weak-minded people, people with no work ethic, people who just are drained in consumerism, people who don't value conservative family values, by the way. And a godless society is a dangerous society. And Western Europe is godless. Paraguay is not godless. So I think what we might want to do in this channel to kind of further highlight that and strengthen the religious aspect here is that we can start teaching about conservative family values the way the church teaches it. Yeah. Because it's the most efficient way. If you don't believe in God, you don't believe in anything. You know what I mean? If there is no God there's no belief, there's no point. And Europe, Western Europe, is godless. That's a fact. It's godless. And to be fair, America is godless too. America is very capitalistic, and the population is very polarized. You have a ton of people that are working hard, long hours, and they can't afford anything. They just live paycheck to paycheck. And the wealth gap is just widening and widening and widening. So I'm actually very fortunate that I'm in this situation to come here, because a lot of people don't have the opportunity that I have. I started running my business at the age of 12, and it wasn't a real business in terms of profit, but at least I started working online. And so I'm in a very favorable position to live here. But I know a lot of you guys watching this video, you don't have that. So you have to get some skills to get out of the political system. And my ancestors in Austria immigrated to the US already in the 20th century, early 20th century. And they came back with amazing cars by ship And this story was told to me by my grandmother. And then she sat like with her friends, they were having a family gathering, and they were like, oh, look, here's my rich uncle with his car. And it didn't have anything because that was during World War II. They were poor. It had nothing. And her uncle had left to the US and became very, very wealthy in the 30s, right? That's almost 100 years ago. You and I, we were not even a plan back then, right? We weren't even a thought yet, Yeah. But it's interesting to listen to the story that highlights how people with opportunities and skills and obviously wealth can leave because they have the option to do so. And sometimes we get people commenting on our channel that, oh, you shouldn't leave this and that, only weak people leave. No, people with money leave. People who have opportunities, skills, and money leave. And some people who have less of that leave too. It's an option. And if you have the option, you go for it because it's better. But anyway, I think we covered a lot of ground. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah. I just want to say to any sort of people that think that it's not worth it maybe to move to another country or to a developing country, specifically Paraguay. I think that, and I speak to most Americans and Europeans, I think that more immigrants come here, they would definitely realize the opportunity that we have here in this country, in this very moment, in this period of development that we are experiencing right now in Paraguay. I think we have the opportunity to build generational wealth right now. I think I told you before, Paraguay is like how America was during the Wild West. Well, not the violent part, but the part of entrepreneurship and making tons of money in essential industries. I think there's lots of opportunity here.
I agree. And why wouldn't you take this opportunity if it's in front of you?
Yeah.
If you have the criteria to match the opportunity, you can take it. And the best thing you can do in life is start out developing some skills, speak more languages. That will go a long way. I'm struggling with my Spanish, but it's improving, and I'm willing to fail. And you got to be willing to fail in life, and that's hard because it hurts you. Failure is painful. Being rejected by women is painful, right? We know that. We talked about that too, right? It's painful. Yeah. Or not succeeding in business is painful. Everything's painful, but you have to be willing to absorb some kind of pain to grow.
You have to stand up.
Exactly. Well, thank you for watching, guys. We appreciate it. If you're interested in relocating to Latin America, specifically Paraguay, Argentina, Uruguay, please contact us. Book a consultation with me personally. You should see our website link displayed right on the screen. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching Nomad Elite, and we see you on the next video.